Hey folks, I am here with Danny Eni. I am so excited to be with you, Danny. Thank you so much for your time. As many of you know, Danny is the CEO and founder of Mirasee, which I had to look up what that means, but now I totally get it. And really, in my, sometimes people call me the godfather of video, which I don't think I really deserve, but you are the godfather of online education and online courses. So I'm thrilled to talk with you today. I just finished your new book, Online Courses, which I loved. So thanks for being here.
Lou, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and it's a privilege.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure. So thank you so much. So I wanted to grab you for a few minutes so I could share you with my audience and my community and my viewers and kind of pick your brain on the whole idea of online courses, which is obviously more important than ever now in our post-pandemic world. But first, tell me a little bit about the new book, because it's a little bit different than your previous books. And I know you've done several. I was looking at um, what was Teach and Grow Rich is the one that I was looking at last night.
Yeah, so I have published a number of books about the topic of online courses, and people seem to like them. Across the portfolio, I think there's like
Yeah.
close to 1,000 5-star reviews,
Oh my
and
God.
yet there is this disconnect between reading the book and putting the ideas into action. And
Mhm.
sometimes people are like, well, I needed more checklists, I needed more step by step, but the more of that I put into the books, it doesn't help.
Right.
And what I realized is that it's not about missing information. It's about that gap between, as Yogi Berra liked to say, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. In practice, there is, right? And, it's very different to hear about somebody's ski journey versus to stand at the top of the hill looking down and you're terrified, right? It's different to read a book about parenting than it is to sit across from a 3-year-old who's crying and throwing spaghetti all over the kitchen. And
Yeah.
so I wrote this book as a parable. So it's the story of this fictional character, Amy, and how she wants to make a success for herself online and finds her way to online courses after trying a bunch of different things. And some things work out and some things don't. And she has the struggles and stumbles that people do.
Mhm.
And you kind of get to ride shotgun on that whole journey. So it's not just that you learn the steps, which you do, but
Right.
you also get to see what it feels like to kind of try on that whole experience
Mhm.
and see if you feel like it might fit.
I love that. I know, and I think it really helps internalize it a lot more. So, quick read, great read. So, thank you for doing that. But I want to also talk about the bigger picture of. I know you talk about an online course business, and a lot of folks say, "Oh, I just had to make a course, or I just need to do a course." Can you talk about the difference between creating an online course versus an online course business?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same difference as being, someone who makes pies versus having a pie business, or someone
Mhm.
who wrote a book versus someone who has a business that is driven or built around that book.
Mhm.
So an online course is the product. It's the vehicle for delivering that transformation. The business is what allows you to reach people, get them into the course at scale, create that transformation, and do it in a way that is viable and sustainable and scalable for you and for everyone that you're trying to serve.
Right.
So, the online course is an important active ingredient there,
Mhm.
but it's not enough.
Right. And that's the main thing. I mean, like again, it's the difference between having a business and a hobby, I guess. So something it's not a matter of like, oh well, I've made 3 online courses, so I have an online course business. It's like it's not like about a certain number, right? It's more about the big picture.
Yeah, it's not about the number of courses. It's about, I mean, you can have a great online course business with just the one course
Hmm.
if everything is built kind of around that to make it work. So here's the real question, right? Because sometimes people come to me and they say, I want to create an online course. I'm like, great, I can help you with that. Sometimes they come and they say, well, I already have an online course. What are you going to help with? What do I need from you?
Hmm.
And what I'll say to them is, if your online course is doing everything that you want it to do for your business and for your life,
Hmm.
you need nothing from me. But if there is a gap, if you are not generating the revenue that you want to make, if you're not making the impact you want to make, if you don't have the freedom, the notoriety, whatever it is that you were hoping an online course would do for you, if you don't have that yet, that's where there's probably a gap between what you built and the business that it can drive.
Hmm. Because it's not a case of if you create an online course, they will come.
Well, just like anything else in life, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's just not how it goes.
Right. So, given that now is obviously post-pandemic, we're all working virtually. Conferences are going virtual. Obviously, courses, things like that. How do you make your course or any course stand out in the sea of online choices that we have now?
Well, a lot of it comes down to building a course that actually delivers on the promise. And I think you hit on something really important there, which is that on the one hand, everyone is online now, right?
Hmm.
Everyone is aware of online courses. The pandemic took care of that. And that means you've got a mainstream, large, but also mainstream in their expectations
Hmm.
market. So, in other words, expectations of what your course will do and deliver have never been higher.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's a saturated space. It's harder to stand out. Zoom fatigue is a real thing. People are like, I don't want to sit in front of my screen, for another online course. It's got to be, you've got to work to hold their attention. So the stakes have never been higher. It's never been more challenging. And what it really comes down to is, are you building something that is just interesting, that is just entertaining? Are you teaching about? And the bar for that is very high because then you're competing with the likes of, Masterclass and all the celebrity instructors who are there who have, great name recognition and interesting stories and premium production value. That's an uphill battle. I mean, not to mention, like Netflix and Game of Thrones, and that's also competing for entertainment attention. But if you're in the business of actually delivering a transformation, right, actually imparting competence, when you get through this, you're going to be able to do things that you want to be able to do that you weren't before, not just know about things.
Hmm.
That's where you really have that strong lever of potential for differentiation because in that area, the space is still very young. There are a lot of online courses, there's a lot of information, there are a lot of videos, a lot of membership sites. There are not a lot of places yet where you can go to actually get that real transfer of competence and capability.
Hmm. So focus on the transformation and the outcome more than the bells and whistles of the course.
That's what makes for a real referable course,
Hmm.
right? Education fundamentally is a shortcut. You
Yeah.
have an objective you want to get to.
Hmm.
Education should get you there in less time, at less cost, with less risk than if you were to try to do it by yourself.
Yeah. So, having said that, what is the biggest mistake most entrepreneurs make when they create their online course?
Well, the biggest mistake is kind of the light switch problem, right? I flip a lot of light switches in my house. That doesn't make me an electrician, right? And so, you have maybe gone through a lot of online courses. You've seen online courses or just courses like regular education. And you
Right.
think, well, I've seen a bunch of these. I'll just do it that way.
Hmm.
And you don't really dig into, well, what makes the good ones good? What makes an effective one tick?
Right.
What do I need to know about instructional design, about creating something that delivers a real transformation? And frankly, when people do that, because who should be creating an online course? Someone who has real expertise and credibility.
Hmm.
And that means they also have a lot to lose, right? When you put a course that is not up to the level of your professional reputation otherwise, you're damaging that professional reputation. There's that risk. And so that's the biggest risk of people who actually go to market with something that's half baked or not ready.
Hmm.
The other big mistake people make is thinking that they have to have it perfect. And so they retreat into their bat cave, they work on their magnum opus of a course. And if they ever emerge, which sometimes they're just in there for months or years and never come out, but if they ever emerge, they often find that what they've created is really misaligned with what the market actually turns out to want.
Hmm. Right. And that's a biggie. It's the same as working on the great American novel. That's like, well, that's working on it for 20 years. At some point, you got to go to market and see what works.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of this obviously has changed with the pandemic. It's kind of shifted the entire landscape. How has that opportunity changed? Well, what is the opportunity now for entrepreneurs given the fact that we're all learning at home?
Well, the opportunity is substantial, right? If you look at the history of the online courses opportunity, and we can go back a little further than the pandemic.
Right.
Um, but any new innovation kind of goes through society, goes through the market in a very predictable way. Everett Rogers described this phenomenon in what he called the diffusion of innovations, which everyone who's watching this, I'm sure, even if they don't know the term, they're familiar with the idea. If you've ever seen a bell curve and there's innovators and early adopters and mainstream, that's the diffusion of innovation.
Yeah.
So the very early days, right? Let's say 2000 to 2015, that was the innovators. That was like the people who like to be on the bleeding edge. And if you think about who buys when something is in that innovator space, think about the early days of the smartphone,
Right.
right? The early smartphones, it was a brick. The battery barely lasted any time. It ran like 4 apps and it crashed half the time. The
Mhm.
cell service was not great. The form factor was awful, and it cost a fortune. And innovators are cool with that. They're like, yes, I want to be on the cutting edge. Once you start moving past that, expectations start to rise. Like, no, no, the phone has got to look good, feel good, run well, be reasonably priced. Like expectations go up.
Mhm.
And that's what we saw happen in, let's call it 2015 to 2020. We saw this kind of split in the online courses world in two directions. So one direction was just information. And so that's where you've got these like courses that are essentially a bunch of videos in a membership site,
Yeah.
and the quality went up and up. The cost went down and down. That's where you see something like Masterclass or
Mhm.
Udemy or Creative Live, where you can get something really good, really interesting, really well produced
Yeah.
for maybe 50 or $100. And that side of things has become very saturated, right? If you want to compete on an information only course, that's a sucker's game. You're just probably not going to be successful. You're up against big name celebrities, massive marketing budgets. It's not likely to work. And the unit economics are challenging.
Yeah, I don't know why anybody would want to watch Matthew McConaughey more than they want to watch me, but that being the case, it's what it is.
There you go. It is what it is. But on the other side of that, we went in the direction of real education, real transformation. So I'll give you a real live example.
Mhm.
There's a course on Masterclass by Aaron Sorkin about screenwriting. Aaron Sorkin wrote The West Wing. He wrote A Few Good Men. And
Yes.
I've watched that course because I'm interested in writing and I like his work. And it was interesting. It was entertaining. That was all good.
Mhm.
But here's the thing. Information, no matter how good it is good for broadening your horizons about what's possible. It's good for exposing you to new possibilities. It's good for integrating new knowledge into existing expertise. But information does not impart competence, right? We don't get good at things by reading books or watching videos.
Mhm.
So I watched the course and I picked up a few tricks, but I didn't come out of that course a substantially better writer, right? So let's say that now I'm thinking, well, actually, I do want to become a much better writer. I want to become a much better screenwriter. And I'm not alone, because the reputation of Aaron Sorkin and the marketing budget of Masterclass, they did the heavy lifting to make
Right.
sure that a lot of aspiring writers suddenly know that, hey, I can get better through online courses. So now they're thinking, okay, where do I go? Who's going to actually help me get better? And of course, the answer is not Aaron Sorkin, because he's busy doing other things.
Right.
So that space of, I will put something real and substantive on the table where there's an opportunity for you to practice, to apply, to get feedback. That's where, and at a premium, obviously, those things cost $1,000, $2,000, $3,000. It
Mhm.
costs money to create that transformation. That's where there is a real substantial opportunity. And we were just kind of tip into that mainstream awareness where the information only courses really, like, that was not a game that people should play anymore. And these real educational transformative experiences, that's a really big opportunity. We were just tipping into that at the beginning of 2020. And then of course the pandemic hit, and we saw 5 to 10 years of market acceleration happen in the span of 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
And so now we're squarely in that reality. And as the world, it's generous or optimistic to say that the world has emerged from the pandemic, because the world is in very different stages of
Right.
emerging. But as we slowly do emerge, as we slowly go back to some semblance of normal, it's not going to be back to the way it was,
Mhm.
right? Do people want to get on planes and travel again? In some cases, absolutely. For fun, for pleasure, to meet interesting people. They
Mhm.
don't want to do it in cases where it's just a hassle and they don't have to. And so a lot more business is staying online. That opportunity for online courses, there were a whole bunch of holdouts during this pandemic who were like, I'm just waiting for this to pass. And now that it's starting to pass, they're like, oh wait, it's not going back.
Oops.
So
Yeah.
I've got to get used to this. Right now really is the time, and the opportunity is dramatic, as long as you're getting into it with the intention of, I'm going to deliver a real transformation that people will, of course, pay for appropriately.
Right. So does that mean that the playing field has been somewhat leveled by the pandemic?
It hasn't been leveled. I mean, it was level before that.
Right. We all have
It
access to.
Yeah, it has been really brought into the mainstream. And this is an important nuance, because if you think about, um, a lot of the people who are probably watching this video, like, you've been aware of online courses for a long time, right? It's not news to you that online courses are a thing.
Right.
And you're like, how is this new? How is this something that just, what are we talking about here? But it's a little bit like when you're in a nightclub and you've got your ear, 2 feet away from the speakers and it's so loud you can barely think. It's like, how can anyone not hear this? But of
Mhm.
course, 2 blocks down, nobody knows this is going on. And so for the last 20 years, online courses have really been this like insider's game.
Right.
And what the pandemic did is blow that bubble open, no pun intended, so that
Mhm.
now everyone is aware of it, right? If you go back 3 years and you were to ask someone on the street, hey, where can I take a course?
Right.
They would have said, I don't know, university, a community college, a community center,
Mhm.
right? Now, ask where can I take a course? They're going to give you websites,
Udemy,
right? It's in
Teachable. Mhm.
exactly whether it's Udemy, whether it's LinkedIn Learning, whether it's Coursera, Masterclass, Creative Live, Highbrow. There are a lot of these platforms.
Mhm.
And so it's suddenly in the mainstream awareness. And that means that there's a lot of people buying who weren't buying before. So it really is this golden age of everyone is aware, the technology hurdles have been overcome, everyone's looking, and yet the supply of these actual transformative courses hasn't risen to meet the occasion yet.
It's amazing. And once, I know because I do a lot of courses, obviously, and the main thing, it's one thing to sell the course and get people in the course, but what are the best ways to keep students engaged and successful once they're part of it? Because if I do a video challenge, 30-day video challenge, let's say I sell 100, 20 folks will be really engaged and into it. Some of them will never even open
Mhm.
the email. So how do you, uh, are there any ways around that?
Absolutely. So there's 2 ways to think about this. There's, I'm biased, but there's the right way and there's the wrong way.
Hmm.
So the wrong way is where people start reaching into the gamification toolbox for tips and tricks, right? How can I add sound effects and coins coming down on the screen and dancing unicorns and rewards and all that kind of stuff? And that can have an effect in certain cases, right? Casinos are addictive for a reason. But what they fundamentally do, if you think about a casino makes it even easier to do something you were already inclined to do. It's like putting grease on an already slippery slope,
Right.
right? In other words, it something you're already motivated to do, it makes it even easier
Hmm.
because it's a motivational kind of push. Now,
Right.
here's the challenge with that, right? Motivation is a very misunderstood concept in education. Motivation does not empower you to do anything you're not already capable of doing. It just empowers you to do to the best of your ability what you are already capable of doing.
Mhm.
And so if, everything about this, sure, yeah, easy, it's getting me to where I want to go, it's just like I need an extra little push, then great. Netflix saw a big rise in usage when they introduced the automatic next episode. That's a little gamification hack.
Hmm.
But I don't think that's going to create the desired effect if you do that with a course video, because that's not fundamentally why people are stopping to watch.
Hmm.
So if you actually want to create something that engages people's attention, you have to start with solid design principles, right? And where most course creators start is they ask themselves, well, what do I want to teach? What
Hmm.
do I want to teach about? And the reality is it's not about you. It doesn't matter what you want to teach. It
Hmm.
matters what does your student want to learn? And more specifically, when all is said and done, what do they want to be able to do? This is called backward integrated design.
Yep.
And we want to go a few levels deep. So we want to ask, first of all, at the end of the day, what is it that they want to be able to do? Second of all, how well do they want to be able to do it? And third, under what circumstances,
Hmm.
right? If you decide that you're teaching a course on self-defense, right? So I'm going to teach them how to block and how to punch. So are we talking about, do I have to be able to do that with, moderate degree of precision and accuracy on the training mat in a controlled environment? Or do I have to be able to do it well enough to defend myself from a larger, more strong and quick opponent in the uncontrolled, crazy environment of being out on the street and it's raining, and maybe it's late at night, and maybe I've had a couple of drinks, right? Those are very different levels of skill. So you need to get clear, well, what do I want to be able to do? How well and under what circumstances? Right? And then from there, you work backwards. What are the steps from that backwards to their current level of ability? And you build the scaffolding one step after the other for them to get there. And that involves the information you're going to give them, the instructions. That involves the opportunity for them to practice, to put whatever they're doing into real life. And that can be theoretical, right? Worksheets, exercises, etc. It can be practical. I'm doing real things in my business, in my life. And then you've got to find a way of closing the loop, giving them feedback, telling them what they did that was right and what they did that wasn't right, they need to improve. And that's where the real learning happens. And that feedback can be very brute force. right? If I'm learning skateboarding, the feedback can come from, concrete and gravity, or it can be a lot more nuanced from a coach, from an instructor, from a teacher's assistant, from a peer, from a mentor kind of situation. So that is how you actually create something impactful and transformative. And guess what? If you're giving people what it is that they want to accomplish, they will want to come back, they'll want to push through. And once you're doing all of that well, sprinkling some gamification on top of that can be worthwhile. But gamification is the last tool you want to reach for, not the first.
Yeah, the bells and whistles are not going to do it. So I think, as a video creator and video teacher, I think I suspect one of the roadblocks of people not creating more courses is the idea that, oh my God, I've got to do video lessons. How important is video both in creating the course and in promoting the course, and how important is the quality of that video in the course?
So how important is video really depends, first of all, on what you're teaching.
Hmm.
Um, People like video, they like to connect with video, and there are cases where audio will be just fine, or a written email course is fine too. It really depends. There are some very successful courses in these different modalities. I wouldn't shy away from video if it's something that fits your medium. In terms of how good the video needs to be, the answer is it depends on how developed the course is. So your first run of the course, it doesn't need to be very well produced at all, right? It doesn't have to be even pre-recorded. You can be live on a Zoom call just explaining the ideas, and that's actually preferable because all things being equal, I'd like you to see your students' faces. I'd like you to, if they're confused, I want you to know it right away, rather than maybe you figure it out, 6 weeks later. So the very first run, the production value doesn't have to be high at all. Then once you're like, okay, this is working, I know what people want, I've identified the points that are rough that I need to smooth over, then you can start leveling up the video. And eventually that becomes important, right? You're not going to make millions of dollars with a course where you haven't invested in creating something good, but that's pretty far down the line for most people.
So I'm really looking forward to the Course Business Masterclass, but I'm wondering for my viewers, what is the biggest benefit of participating in this program?
The biggest benefit is that you will be successful in your online course business. You're not going to have to feel around for the right answer. You're not going to have to stumble and fail. You're not going to wonder why things didn't work when they didn't work. You will have the step-by-step plan to follow, and you will be successful with it. And we guarantee that. If you put in the time, you do the work, you lean on your coach when you need to, you will successfully launch your course. Basically, what it comes down to is that we guarantee you will be successful. And there's a lot that goes into making that happen. There's the curriculum, there are the steps of the training, there's the coaching, there's the community, there's the infrastructure, there's the marketing support. There's a lot that goes into it.
Hmm.
But fundamentally, what's the old thing? People aren't buying a drill, they're buying a hole in their wall,
Hmm.
right? The hole in your wall is that you'll have a successful online course launch and making you money in your business. That's what it comes down to, and we guarantee it.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. Danny Eni, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Say hello to
Thank
your
you
daughter.
so much for having me.
My pleasure. Talk to you